It's been a tough period, but I've made some fairly drastic changes, and I've made a bit of a decision in conjunction with my wife this afternoon. Got some big news for the channel. The big news is, look, it's quite serious. We're actually going to sell our children because the lack of sleep just translates into a lack of training. And look, the channel has always been my number one concern, I guess. It's sort of up here, and children are down there, and then the rest of life is, way down here. So what we're going to do is sell our children, bargain basement prices. Anyone who's interested in a child, let me know. I got two. I got a 4.5-year-old and a 9-month-old who's making squeaking noises behind the camera right now.
So welcome back to the RCA Training Tips Show, where, jokes aside, let's get this out of the way first. Neill and I, we both love our kids very much, and clearly Neill's kids aren't up for sale, but the fact is, when you have kids and they're super young and you have multiple, as I have also experienced while also trying to race my bike competitively at the same time, there are periods, and I still clearly remember this without really being able to remember it, where there is no forgiveness. It's the triple header. Being a lack of sleep, which borderline accumulates into a zombie state, add in illnesses like colds, gastro, or the 24-hour flu, and weird symptoms you can't even put your finger on, while having to look after and cater to the needs of your young children at the same time. That dynamic is counterintuitive to getting stronger on the bike, but there is a way. We all love cycling, so we want to find a way, and that's what this series Zero to Hero with Neill Stanbury is all about. Before we get into the meat of this video, let's hear what Neill had to say about what's been going on.
It's more like 0 to 0 at the moment. I hit a small rut. Cameron was leading me up, gradually increasing a bit of my intensity. And last week I had a triple whammy. I had a sick child, and then I had a COVID vaccination, and then I had another sick child. And look, it's lack of sleep and the general rundown feeling from the vaccination. It's really knocked me for six, and I haven't been able to do any intensity at all. Cameron was going to put me through a high intensity hill climb session on the weekend. I tried to ride and my legs were just like lead.
So there's two things we're going to discuss here. Number one, what to do when you get hit with weird sicknesses, illnesses, and general fatigue. And number two is a simple test you can complete to assess where you're at when you're not quite feeling yourself. First up though, bit of a plug for the RCA. Our final intake for the Up-Level Road Cycling course is happening in November, first week of November. So if you want to join me, Neill, and hundreds of other recreational and amateur road cyclists taking their performance to the next level, then you can express your interest by filling out a form below. You'll see a link in the description. So, as Neill mentioned, we were priming Neill last week for the benchmark climb in his local area called the Dixon Road Climb, which is roughly a 5 to 6 minute effort. This was going to be Neill's second attempt at the benchmark climb, and we were going to be able to assess if he'd had any improvements in time up the climb, but also his average power, a 5 to 6 minute power effort. Had that improved this time round versus the initial attempt? Now, despite Neill being struck from all angles, he was still keen on the Sunday effort post his Thursday vaccination, as the doctors suggested roughly a 24 to 48 hour period of low to moderate activity before getting back into things, which gave us some time. So I said to Neill, let's leave the primers workout on the Saturday, and after you've completed that, we'll assess things from there. Now, for those of you who don't know, the primers is a workout in Wahoo's system that RCA members use the day before either a test, an event, or in this case, hunting your Strava PB. The idea is we're tapping on the door to our upper end systems without going deep, priming yourself for the next day without causing fatigue. But in this case, we additionally use this primers test to assess how Neill would respond to raising intensity for short periods, and he felt like he had dead legs. So we made the executive decision to pull the Sunday test and rest. And I've suggested to Neill, which I would suggest to anyone who's experienced some fatigue or they're unwell, even when you feel like you can do something, if you're still feeling that way, especially stay away from intense exercise, but rest as much as you possibly can, because you'll simply do more harm than good. and you won't be able to train in an optimal way. And what we're trying to do with Neill at the moment, we're increasing his intensity. So some of his sessions are getting harder and harder and harder. And if he can't complete those sessions in an optimal way, we're not going to achieve the fitness adaptations we're looking to achieve. And by trying to go for it, we're running risk of prolonging the fatigued or unwell state that he's currently in. So in summary, always respect and listen to your body. I can't drill that in enough. And in the case of Neill, clearly it's obvious something's going on. So we're going to cut it right back until things improve. Number 2 is a simple test you can complete to assess when you're ready to get back into things. So Neill still wants to train this week, despite not being 100%, which is human nature. Many of us would want to do that. And while the primers gave us an idea up front, a gentle idea that Neill's not quite ready for intensity, we're not going to use the primers workout every other day when Neill wants to do a workout as our tool to assess when he's ready to get back into it. So what could we do? What workout could we do to keep the engine ticking over without pushing ourselves too much, and use this workout as a way to assess whether we're ready to get back into things or not? Now, this is where the benefits of a power meter come into play, because we know Neill's zone 2, which is a green aerobic zone, power output. Okay, and we know how his heart, which is in his body, the power meter is not in your body, the heart is in the body, how the heart responds to that zone 2 power output, because we've done this in the past. We've got data that shows us this. So let's have a little look at Neill's last cardio drift test, which was on the 16th of September. And as you can see, Neill's heart rate is around the 130 beat mark for his zone 2 power output of 140 watts. So that's a fit and healthy Neill. So what if we got current Neill in a slightly fatigued state to do the same ride? It's not overly taxing. It's a good little training session because we're working the aerobic base fitness, and we can see how his heart rate responds, which is what we got him to do. Now, a couple of things to consider here. Neill did this test on Monday, so a couple of days before this video went live, implementing a couple of intervals to make this ride even less taxing, but he's operating at mostly a zone 2 power output, which has recently increased to 155 watts, which does create a bit of a nuance here because of his recent increase in FTP, but his heart rate is now circa 155 beats at his zone 2 power output, which is 20 to 25 beats per minute more. It's pretty significant. Yes, his zone 2 power has increased a little bit, 15 watts as mentioned, because of a recent increase in FTP, but 20 to 25 beats is not normal. Far from it. Now, interestingly, Neill has done one other zone 2 ride at his new 155 watt zone 2 power output on the trainer since his increase in FTP, which was the previous Monday before his COVID shot. And looking at this data, my assumption is his immune system was running in overdrive way back then, despite Neill not even recognizing this significant heart rate elevation at the time. So speaking directly with Neill about this particular workout, I asked if he was heat compromised, because it started to get more humid here recently on the Sunshine Coast, and that can affect your heart rate. No was the answer. He did it on a cool morning. I asked if he'd had a triple shot coffee or any caffeine that might have affected his heart rate. Once again, no. The one bit of insight that he did provide was that his youngest has been unwell for a couple of weeks now, and as a result has had disrupted sleep for a couple of weeks, and the accumulation of lack of sleep could potentially be adding to this situation. But I would suggest it's because he's fighting off a bug and his cardiovascular system is having to work harder than normal for the same aerobic output because his immune system is compromised or under stress. And of course, there is the increase in zone 2 power output that we've seen because of Neill's increase in FTP. So that's a 15 watt increase, but that wouldn't suggest a 20 beat increase in your heart rate. Members all the time in the RCA are increasing their FTP in their zone 2. Quite often you might see their heart rate increase a little bit, maybe by 5 beats, touch more, maybe a touch more drift while they get that new power output under control. That could take 2 or 3 weeks, but it's not going to be a 20 to 25 beat increase. So clearly Neill's body is telling us something. Something's going on and we should respect it. So this simple base aerobic test riding at your zone 2 power, ideally on a trainer at roughly 70% of FTP, and seeing how your heart responds compared to normal is a great little workout you can do when perhaps you're feeling a little bit under the weather or you're at the tail end of a sickness. And this enables you to assess how you physically respond to cycling activity without overstressing yourself or potentially making your situation worse. And of course, once you start to see that heart rate go back to where it should be, where you've seen it in the past or in recent times before you got sick, then you know you've got some signals that you can probably start to get back into it. So I've said to Neill this week, play each day by ear. If you feel like riding, jump on the trainer, go out, don't do too much volume, ride pretty light. If you're feeling fatigued or unwell on that particular day, just don't do anything, rest completely and touch base with me as I'm his coach at the end of this week. And if he wants to do a bit of intensity on the weekend, we'll do a little bit. We won't do too much and we'll just ease back into it. We'll probably spend maybe 5 days to a week just easing back into the intensity before we flick the switch and we get back into it. Hopefully we can get this series back on track. If you've gotten value out of this video today, don't forget to give it a like and we'll catch you in the next one.